Distinguished guests and delegates, please welcome the Secretary General of the OECD, Mr. Mathias Cormann, the 2026 MCM Chair and Prime Minister of Finland, Petteri Orpo, the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, Mr. Todd Kachka, and the MCM Vice Chairs, Korea and New Zealand, and ministers for the MCM Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats immediately and turn your attention to the screen for remarks from the President of Finland, Mr. Alexander Stubb. Please take your seats.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by saying that I'm a big admirer of the OECD. Why? Because it delivers. It delivers evidence-based solutions that policymakers can put to work as they seek to strengthen their economies and tackle societal challenges. Moreover, it delivers on a global scale. The OECD soft law instruments make international economic cooperation stronger, more effective, and more predictable. As we seek to draw on the OECD's capacity to address the current emerging challenges, there are 4 points I believe we should keep in mind. First, we are a community underpinned by shared values such as democracy, human rights, rule of law, and market economy. The OECD's model of building solutions among like-minded countries has proven its worth. In these times of geopolitical and geoeconomic uncertainty, we should make the best of this shared foundation and strive to maintain the OECD as an important anchor of the rules-based system. We need more OECD, not less. Second, and importantly, we need to ensure that solutions we build at the OECD can reach beyond our membership. This means that while the OECD can and should remain a platform for democracies, to make an impact, we need to engage also countries that don't share all of our values and convictions. The real value of the OECD, the ability for it to shape the global agenda, only becomes evident when we combine like-minded cooperation with a wider outreach. I'm convinced that there can be no meaningful global governance without the emerging Global South. This remains true for the OECD as well. My third point is this: we need to get back to basics. As countries are focused to navigate an environment of expanding export restrictions and trade friction, we need to be reminded that open, rules-based trade is an essential building block for our prosperity. In today's world, trade and efficient markets are valuable not only as drivers of growth, they also help us diversify our value chains. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, my fourth point is the close link between economic prosperity and international peace and security. What the OECD does is crucially connected to the purposes of the United Nations: peace and security, international law, human rights, and fundamental freedoms. Particularly, the OECD is doing a commendable effort in supporting the reform process of Ukraine and laying a foundation for its future economic prosperity. I look forward to seeing Ukraine as a full member around the OECD table in the future. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Finland is honored to chair this year's Ministerial Council meeting. These 2 days will provide you an opportunity to seek common, knowledge-based solutions to issues underpinning our policies and affecting our future. I wish you a fruitful Ministerial Council meeting. Thank you.
We now invite to the stage the Secretary General of the OECD, Mr. Mathias Cormann.
To our chair, Prime Minister Petteri Orpo of Finland, Prime Minister Luis Arroyo Sanchez of Peru, President Guy Parmelin of Switzerland, ministers, excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, friends all, a very warm welcome to this 2026 OECD Ministerial Council meeting on getting industrial policies right for open markets, growth, and prosperity. This morning, we released the OECD Economic Outlook. The global economy is under pressure. The Middle East conflict has disrupted energy and commodity markets. Growth is down. Inflation is up. Fertilizer prices such as urea have risen sharply with implications for food prices and food security. Financial market volatility has risen. Supply chains are being tested again, and all this comes on top of deeper pre-existing structural challenges. Productivity growth that has been too low for too long, a fracturing of the global rules-based trading order, inequalities of opportunity fueling political polarization, population aging, weighing on growth and pressuring public finances, and digital and climate transitions requiring investments at a scale and speed governments have yet to match. And each of these structural challenges has an industrial policy dimension. Each requires governments to make hard choices about what to do, what not to do, who to work with, and how to work better together. Which is exactly what we are here today and tomorrow to address. Governments everywhere are rethinking their role in the economy. The pandemic exposed vulnerabilities in health, economic, and societal structures and in global supply chains. The global race for leadership in AI, semiconductors, and quantum is intensifying. The pressure to secure reliable, affordable, clean energy is mounting, and the window to get it right is closing fast. And citizens are demanding that growth delivers tangible benefits in their own lives, not just in aggregate across the economy. It's against this backdrop that industrial policy is back, and it is back with force. And the question then is not whether government should act. Governments are acting and they will act. The question is how to act and how to act wisely. Because the evidence of history is quite clear. Yes, industrial policy can help unlock stronger growth, more innovation, and increased resilience. But it can also distort markets, crowd out private investment, stifle innovation, undermine fiscal sustainability, and trigger costly trade conflicts, undermining growth and living standards over time. The difference between success and failure lies in how well industrial policy is designed, and even more importantly, how well it is implemented. Well-functioning markets and open, rules-based trade remain the most effective foundation for industrial success. Good industrial policy works with the market, not against the market. And the conversation that we're having over these next 2 days is also taking place against the backdrop of widening global economic imbalances, with persistent surpluses in some economies and chronic deficits in others. The cost of leaving them unaddressed is rising, but both surplus and deficit countries have real adjustments to make. Deficit countries must save more and spend less. Surplus countries must consume more and export less. And some deficit economies face an additional urgent challenge, closing a competitiveness and productivity gap that has been allowed to widen for too long. Coordinated dialogue is not optional. Without it, the pressure will continue to build, and the risk of disorderly adjustment with all the damage that brings to global stability and growth grows with it. It means, for surplus economies, rebalancing means more than shifting from investment and exports to consumption. It means moving away from market-distorting subsidies toward more market-based approaches, the kind that generate durable, efficient growth rather than dependencies that are hard to unwind. In this context, this week we released our OECD Magic Database, a unique tool to track industrial subsidies globally at the firm level, shedding light on their distortive potential. It covers 15 sectors and 525 companies, and it shows that industrial subsidies are widespread across sectors and regions, that most are modest relative to firm revenue, but significant in terms of profit margin. This is particularly the case in heavy industries and strategic sectors, and one pattern stands out. Firms based in China receive substantially larger support than firms in OECD countries, primarily through below-market borrowing from state-controlled banks. Such policies have contributed to the widening of unsustainable global trade imbalances. They have also enabled China to accumulate powerful positions across key industrial supply chains. The concentration of supply in strategically critical sectors now represents a systemic risk to the resilience of the global economy. Having access to this data makes honest, evidence-based conversations possible. The findings and implications make them necessary. The OECD is available as a platform to facilitate this dialogue in support of bilateral and plurilateral conversations. So what does good industrial policy deliver? It starts with productivity. The single most important thing any government can do for its industrial base is support broad-based, stronger productivity growth. Cutting red tape, investing in skills, funding research and innovation, promoting gender equality as a participation and productivity enhancing measure, building world-class infrastructure and addressing the digital and energy transitions, not as a cost to be managed, but as a necessary investment to secure international industrial competitiveness into the future. But good industrial policy also requires something no country can provide alone. It requires partners. supply chain resilience, technology leadership in AI and beyond, critical mineral security, the clean energy transition, none of this can be achieved by any one country unilaterally and on their own. And what a powerful coalition of partners is gathered here today. Our discussions will not only shape outcomes within our own borders, they will also have an impact on emerging and developing economies that rely on continued access to open markets and clear, predictable rules. That is also why it is so important we get the balance right. With industrial policies that support global development and growth and that preserve and enhance opportunities for people all around the world to participate in and benefit from that development and growth. Over the next 2 days, you will address the defining policy challenges of this moment, how to use industrial policy to strengthen your economies while remaining true to the open markets and rules-based trading system that has been the cornerstone of economic strength over the last several decades. We should approach these discussions with pragmatism. Progress in any multilateral setting requires a commitment to listen to each other, to communicate, and to engage. And yes, when necessary, to find compromise. The ability to find common ground, even on difficult issues, even with partners you sometimes disagree with, is not weakness, it is strength. It is the noble art of statecraft. And it is the only way to get things done. Ministers, colleagues, friends, this MCM also marks the formal start of my second and final term as your Secretary General. It is a profound honor to have been entrusted by our members to continue to lead this organization. Over the past 5 years together, we have strengthened this organization. A sharper analytical edge on AI, economic security, fiscal sustainability, the green transition and inclusive growth, a record 8 accession candidate countries, and a more transparent, efficient, fit-for-purpose organization. Your priorities will guide us in the period ahead. Reinvigorating productivity and competitiveness for broad-based growth. Making global trading arrangements fairer and more resilient in a way that preserves the benefits of open markets and rules-based trade. Reinforcing leadership on digital transformation and AI governance. Informing climate policy best practice. Advancing strategic enlargement and global impact. And continuing to modernize how this organization operates. These are not abstract aspirations, they are commitments backed by the resources, the data, the deep expertise and institutional credibility this organization has built over 65 years. In conclusion, getting industrial policy right is not simply a technical challenge. It is a test of whether the open market-based model of development and growth built by our member nations through 65 years of successful cooperation can adapt and prevail in a more contested, fragmented world. Above all, it is a test of whether we can demonstrate to our citizens that this model can still deliver the economic security and the opportunities to get ahead. I believe it can, but only if we choose to make it happen. Only if we defend the values that underpin it, open markets, rules-based trade, democratic governance, not as inherited assumptions, but as active daily commitments we are empowered by the people we serve to defend and to advance. Excellencies, colleagues and friends, let's get to work. But first, very much looking forward to hearing from our chair, the Prime Minister of Finland. Please, the floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, first, there is a slight addition to the program. In keeping with the topic of our meeting, industrial policy, we decided to bring with us a special guest from Finland. Straight from Lapland, I would like to welcome our most famous spokesperson for industrial manufacturing to the States. His factory staffed by highly skilled elves and trusty reindeer has kept our Christmases supplied for centuries. He is truly a national champion. As you know, he is someone who delivers. Welcome, Santa Claus. I believe you have something for Secretary General. Thank you, Santa Claus, and thank you, Mathias. Now let's get to the business. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Finland is honored to chair this Ministerial Council meeting for the first time in over 30 years. I would like to thank you, our co-chairs and the Secretary General for their close cooperation. Evidence-based policymaking is essential for navigating today's challenges. The OECD's role in promoting rules-based international cooperation is more important than ever. The theme of our meeting is getting industrial policy right. I would like to focus my remarks on growth, competitiveness, and security. Let me begin with growth. Across many OECD economies, productivity chains have slowed, populations are aging, and public finances are under pressure. Digitalization, decarbonization, and defense needs are driving structural changes in our societies. As we seek to seize these opportunities, industrial policy has re-emerged as a key tool for countries around the world. When done right, industrial policy can support economic transformation. Poorly designed, however, it risks distorting markets or weakening fiscal sustainability. The challenge is to pursue targeted, non-distortive and non-discriminatory policies that strengthen long-term growth without undermining public finances or the free market. Governments must not replace markets, but rather enable them to function better. This includes designing regulation that supports competition and innovation, reduce unnecessary administrative burden, and ensures a level playing field for companies. Finland's success has relied on strong integration into global value chains, a stable and transparent regulatory environment, and close cooperation between public and private sectors. Having said that, the times are changing. Not all our trading partners are playing fair. For example, in terms of access to key production inputs. However, if we adopt smart industrial policies and pursue international cooperation with like-minded partners, I am confident that we can find the necessary solutions and ensure the global competition remains fair and rules-based. We are here to find these solutions. My second message concerns competitiveness. It is about the ability to innovate, to attract talent and investment, and to adapt to societal change by embracing the industries of tomorrow. These are increasingly linked to emerging technologies. Artificial intelligence, in particular, holds the potential for gains in productivity, innovation, and industrial renewal. Competitiveness means establishing innovation ecosystem that enable different stakeholders to collaborate across the value chain. It means building research infrastructures where different technologies and disciplines can converge and interact. It means providing research and development funding for deep tech to be turned into real-life solutions. And finally, it means making sure that research institutions and companies have access to the talent and capital they need to innovate and scale. In Finland, we have developed world-class knowledge and manufacturing hubs in AI and quantum computing, wireless networks, new space, nuclear energy, and bioeconomy. We have a national spending target of 4% of GDP for research and development, ensuring our innovators a sustained funding pipeline. In addition, we are investing in our most innovative companies so that they can scale and compete in global market. All this is carried out in close collaboration between public and private sectors in a joint national effort. Yet, given the global nature of technology value chains, we also need trust international cooperation. And this brings me to my third and final message, which concerns security. Today, economic security and national security are increasingly interconnected. Supply chain vulnerabilities, dependencies, and geopolitical tensions affect our collective resilience. As advanced economies with shared values and interests, we need to find common solutions to shared problems wherever possible. Addressing concerns about economic security requires coordinated and proportionate action. We must build industrial capacity in key sectors while recognizing that we cannot and we should not produce everything ourselves. Second, we must diversify our supply chains while maintaining openness to global trade flows. Third, we must pursue deeper economic critical resources and technological partnerships among trusted allies. And finally, we must ensure that any measures we take do not undermine the very rules we are working to preserve. Much like growth and competitiveness, our security is not achieved in isolation. It is strengthened through cooperation. Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine is a stark reminder of this reality. Our continued support for Ukraine is not only a matter of solidarity. It is in defense of the rules-based international order on which our economies deepened. Ukraine's resilience highlights the role of technology and innovation in building the defense capabilities and industrial capacity we need. At the same time, the reconstruction of Ukraine will require sustained international commitment. This also applies in the OECD context, and we can help Ukraine reforms its economy and pave the way for its membership. Learning from each other goes both ways. Excellencies, in closing, balanced and responsible industrial policies can be an important instrument in our toolbox. As a forum for mutual learning, policy dialogue and collaboration, the OECD is uniquely positioned to lead this effort. Let our discussions help us to get our industrial policies right in a way that strengthens growth, enhances competitiveness, and reinforces our shared security. Thank you very much.
Please welcome for the MCM Vice Chair, Korea, Second Vice Minister of Finance and Economy, Mr. Chang.
Distinguished Chair Petteri Orpo and Secretary General Mathias Cormann, Vice Chair Todd McClay, and the Excellencies, fellow ministers and delegates. It is a great privilege to represent the Republic of Korea as a Vice Chair and address Ministerial Council Meeting at this critical juncture. The theme of this year's meeting, Getting Industrial Policies Right for Open Market, Growth, and Prosperity, is the most pressing issue facing our era. Today, the global economy is confronted with polycrisis, a multi-layered web of challenges including the risk of entrenched low growth, geopolitical tensions, supply chain vulnerabilities, technological hegemony, the climate crisis, and rapid democratic shifts, etc. Amid this uncertainty, we stand at a critical crossroad where we must steer the global economy back onto a path of stable, dynamic, and resilient growth. At this historic turning point, the structural crisis we face also presents an opportunity to reshape the fundamentals of the global economy and achieve a higher level of prosperity. Today, under the spirit of a virtuous cycle of change built on shared trust, I would like to propose the core principles to collectively overcome the challenges before the international community. First, cooperation must be rooted in openness and rule-based order. Today's prosperity stems from connectivity, not isolation. We must uphold an international economic order based on open trade and investment, fair competition, and predictable rules. Recent efforts to diversify supply chains should not lead to market fragmentation or the resurgence of protectionism. Instead, they must serve as a means to make open economies stronger and more resilient. Second, our focus must remain squarely on innovation and productivity growth. The role of government is to foster an environment where innovation can thrive. By implementing competition-friendly legislation, we must build a level playing field where private creativity and investment can breathe and flourish. Third, policies must be inclusive, forward-looking, and fiscally sustainable. The rapid transformation of the AI era risks marginalizing workers and vulnerable groups while widening the gap between corporations. To address this, we must pursue policies that empower society as a whole and ensure that more citizens and the business enterprise share the fruit of growth. Furthermore, considering the potential side effects of the AI mismanagement or abuse, its technological potential will translate into real societal prosperity only when trust, safety, transparency, and accountability are firmly secured. Climate policy and economic growth must advance hand in hand through such green growth that accelerates green tech innovation and a low-carbon structural transition. We must simultaneously achieve both sustainability and a macroeconomic leap forward. In addition, The low birth rate, aging population, and the subsequent decline in potential growth rates pose severe threats to the sustainability of global economy. In this era of great transition, as the OECD has rightly pointed out, we must focus our strategic investment on growth potential. Through these structural efforts, we must secure fiscal sustainability and alleviate the burden on future generations. OECD plays a pivotal role in this era of grand transition through evidence-based policy analysis, pioneering discussion on international standards, and trust-based policy dialogues among member states. The OECD helps us make better choices. In particular, the OECD's initiatives regarding industrial policy, AI governance, supply chain resilience, trade and investment, and climate and inclusive growth are more vital now than ever before. In alignment with these efforts, the Republic of Korea is actively pursuing industrial policies and structural reform based on these right principles. We are simultaneously enhancing the competitiveness of our strategic industries and reforming regulations while firmly upholding the framework of a fair competitive order and international cooperations. Notably, while steadfastly maintaining fiscal sustainability, Korea is strategically investing in high innovative sectors like AI to boost our growth potential and create a virtuous cycle of growth where increased resources are reinvested into the future. Furthermore, for emerging industries and startups, we have adopted a negative regulation principle, competition-friendly regulation reform to maximize private sector dynamism. Distinguished guests, Korea's remarkable growth experience over past 3 decades was made possible because it has been firmly anchored in market openness, the promotion of competition, and the private sector innovation. Now, we find ourselves in a challenging global environment. However, what we must truly pursue is not zero-sum game, draining competition between nations, but rather a race to the top for better policies that transform the very fabric of the global economy. We must aim for market complementing rather than market distortions, broader inclusion rather than exclusion, and long-term prosperity rather than short-term fixes. As a vice chair of this year's MCM and marking the 30th anniversary of our accession to the OECD, the Republic of Korea will strictly abide by the open trade order and actively participate in international dialogue on the digital supply chain and green transitions. Together with fellow OECD member states, Korea will fulfill its responsibilities in forging a more open, innovative, inclusive, and sustainable global economy. Thank you very much.
Now, for the MCM Vice Chair, New Zealand, please welcome Minister for Trade and Investment, Mr. Todd McClay.
Well, kia ora, bonjour, and good morning. I'd like to thank and acknowledge His Excellency President Stubb and Prime Minister Orpo from Finland for Finland's leadership of this year's MCM. Also for bringing one of your most well-known visitors to New Zealand every year. You're right, Santa Claus does deliver. Can I also acknowledge Vice Minister Hao Jun and fellow Vice Chair and congratulate Korea on its 30-year anniversary of OECD membership. Thank you, Secretary General Mathias. We greatly value your work and that of your team in bringing together policy expertise and analysis on the increasingly complex challenges confronting the world today. New Zealand reaffirms its support to the OECD and is widely recognised and will no doubt be reinforced over the next 2 days. The current global geopolitical climate is at a concerning level. The OECD's evidence-based policy analysis is critical in helping all of us navigate current global shocks. These shocks are having real impacts on our economies and the livelihoods of our citizens. 12 months ago, I raised New Zealand's concerns about a worsening geostrategic environment, particularly the sustained pressure the international rules-based trading system is under. Sadly, a year on, and post-MC14, those concerns have only intensified, and the pressure on global rules-based trade continues to escalate. This strain is driving amplified global trade uncertainty and threatening global economic growth. We're also seeing pressure on international maritime rules and norms around territorial sovereignty and the use of military force. Some of this is playing out in events far from New Zealand, such as Russia's illegal war in the Ukraine and Iran's effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Other sources of tension are closer to home in the South China Sea. The implications of all of these events are far-reaching, and it's not only small economies like New Zealand which suffer because of events, we are all affected. It's precisely in times like these we must remember why institutions like the OECD exist. By utilising the experience around the table, we can work together, collaborate, and build trust to find consensus on solutions to common challenges. We commend the global outlook of the OECD, particularly the continued work under the Indo-Pacific particularly under the Indo-Pacific Strategic Framework. Today, we're also celebrating 10-year anniversary of the Latin America and Caribbean Regional Programme. We also commend the work of the OECD towards a new enhanced partnership with Africa. It is New Zealand's view that working with countries outside of the OECD provides real added value to the OECD. That's why it's great to see so many accession countries here at this year's MCM. New Zealand welcomes the progress made by all accession countries. And as we move through the next 2 days in Paris, and indeed as we work through our own economic issues over the coming months, I remind members that international trade rules are important. Rules provide predictability, certainty, confidence, and fair conditions. That helps our businesses to take risks, to innovate, to grow. It helps them trade with each other. In short, we all stand to benefit from adherence to rules which govern international trade and open markets. And I have had the privilege of working with many of you in the room on rules which govern cross-border trade and investment, supply chain resilience, and the digital economy, amongst many other areas. I close by referencing the importance of this year's theme, which centres on getting industrial policy right for open markets, growth and prosperity. At a time when many countries are looking inward, we remind members that industry policy should not become a proxy for protectionism or unilateralism. That benefits no one. I look forward to working with all of you over the next 2 days alongside Finland as our host and chair and Korea on the complex issues that face all of us. Thank you.
Please welcome from Ukraine, the Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration, Mr. Tadas Kachka.
Good morning. So, dear Chair, Prime Minister Orpo, dear Vice Chairs, dear Secretary General Cormann, and distinguished ministers, it is an honor for me to speak to you and to address OECD Ministerial Council Meeting, taking into account that OECD was one of the very first international organizations that condemned Russian aggression, and from the very first days of massive aggression helped us a lot in creating this enormous solidarity that we cherish and we really appreciate that help us to survive and to defend our territory and people and values and everything that is important for all of us. And that's why for me it is important to talk about industrial policy, because industrial policy is always perceived as something very selfish, something very egoistic. And but we know that we need to be together and promote solidarity among ourselves in order to survive and compete. So that's here I would like to break all the rules of speeches and start with something bad examples of what the discussion that we have on steel in WTO and here in OECD, and most recent measures introduced by the closest partner, European Union, are actually risking to damage Ukrainian economy on more than 1% of GDP. But I think that we will find a solution in the forthcoming weeks, and this risk will not be something negative that overshadow the very important and lifeline support that we got from OECD members, from all member states, from the European Union and other partners. And what the core element of this support is ensuring the resilience of civil life against Russian damages. And this is the core and the heart of industrial policy, because you helped us a lot in order to ensure that the whole infrastructure, energy infrastructure, telecom infrastructure and other infrastructure is operating. And we discovered how interoperable we are and where we are fragile in terms of supply chains and production of different spare part or equipment. OECD helped us to ensure that this cooperation can work, so that our administration work in the same language. It's, that it's, someone will say that it thanks to teachers of English classes, but I rather say that we need to thank the public administration reform and OECD Sigma, that our administration and bureaucracy works and talks in the same language as you are, so that here OECD and many years of investment into reform actually helped us in the most urgent and difficult times. It is more than just public administration, so the policy on state-owned enterprises and ownership policy that we developed together with OECD experts and public procurements and many other reforms that have been implemented long before the war started helped us to talk in the same language and help you to help us in this difficult time. So we really appreciate this work, and we need to continue with it. So that thanks to reforms, we all managed to cooperate. This is the biggest lesson for all of us in this modern world. Final remark is about the new dimension of industrial policy. So OECD is a organization where a lot of peaceful policies were developed, post-war policies were developed. And unfortunately, now we have countries like Russia that want to make war a legitimate tool of governmental policy. And it's quite interesting that this war is damaging our industries, so in Ukraine and elsewhere in the world as well. But the most efficient reply to all this aggression and aggression against our civilization is industrial policy and production of weapons and other things that our defense industry use. And we started with military support of our partners, and we still rely on your support in conventional weapon. But the new weapon like UAVs and the ecosystem developed around it is a game changer in the investment in our future peace. And this is an ecosystem that combines human techness and managerial techniques, logistics and other things, and most of all technologies that are advancing so fast. And that's why we need to cooperate and to ensure that our industrial policy are helping us to defend our weapons. And here we need to ensure that we have a solidarity between all of us, because we see that a supply chain in this area should really be in line with security cooperation and solidarity. We need to avoid any dependencies on the markets and producers that share different values and compete with us in security as well. And when we are talking about trust, I think that the most recent invitation of Ukraine to anti-bribery convention and our joining anti-bribery convention is also another tool of building trust to each other. So just to conclude, I would like to say that all our experience with your support to us showed that when we combine our efforts in helping trade, economic policy, and industrial policy, we can manage to win the wars and all competitions we face. So thank you for your cooperation and hope to cooperate in future as well. Thank you.
Please remain seated and thank again our speakers, President Stubb, Secretary General Cormann, Prime Minister Orpo, Second Vice Minister Howe, Minister McClay, and Deputy Prime Minister Kachka. Now, to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the OECD Latin America and the Caribbean Regional Program, we invite to the stage the Secretary General, the co-chairs, Costa Rica and Uruguay, Ms. Trejos Gallo and Ms. Valeria Csukasi, and for the host of the program's 2026 Ministerial Dialogue, Ms. Susana Sumelzo of Spain.
Hoy celebramos una década de diálogo, cooperación y reformas que han fortalecido las instituciones de nuestros países y consolidado una agenda regional más integrada y orientada al bienestar y las oportunidades para nuestra población.
En este tiempo, el programa se consolidó como una plataforma de diálogo en un contexto regional e internacional desafiante. Ha desempeñado un papel clave como puente entre América Latina y el Caribe y la OCDE, acercando estándares, marcos analíticos y buenas prácticas que fortalecen nuestras políticas públicas.
En estos 10 años del programa regional de la OCDE para América Latina y el Caribe, se ha convertido en un espacio fundamental para acercar posiciones, fortalecer capacidades y avanzar en reformas clave.
Para mi país, este programa tiene un significado especial. Fuimos parte de su impulso fundacional en 2016, en el contexto de la reunión del Consejo a nivel ministerial, presidida por Chile, y ejercimos, junto a Perú, la primera copresidencia de este programa, contribuyendo activamente a definir su visión estratégica y prioridades.
En este 10º aniversario del Programa Regional para América Latina y el Caribe de la OCDE, quiero destacar esta iniciativa que ha fortalecido la cooperación regional y promovido mejores políticas públicas en beneficio de nuestros ciudadanos.
Para Colombia, el programa ha permitido informar con evidencia técnica las decisiones de política pública. Durante nuestra copresidencia con Paraguay, impulsamos una agenda integradora de las dimensiones productiva, social y territorial del desarrollo.
A lo largo de estos años, el Paraguay ha encontrado en el programa una plataforma clave para profundizar el diálogo, fortalecer la integración regional y consolidar vínculos con los países miembros de la OCDE, los organismos internacionales aliados y programas regionales.
A lo largo de esta década, el programa se consolidó como una plataforma valiosa para el diálogo político y la cooperación en nuestra región. Su trabajo contribuyó al fortalecimiento institucional, al intercambio de buenas prácticas y a una mayor integración de América Latina y el Caribe con la economía global.
De esta década, esta iniciativa se ha consolidado como un pilar fundamental para el fortalecimiento institucional y el impulso del desarrollo sostenible en nuestras naciones.
Panamá cree en esta alianza. Creemos en la cooperación entre iguales. Creemos en una América Latina y el Caribe que dialoga con voz propia y que contribuye activamente a la construcción de soluciones globales.
We now welcome to the podium Secretary General Cormann.
Well, thank you very much, and distinguished guests, colleagues, friends all. Today we celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the Latin America and Caribbean Regional Program, and it's, of course, an occasion to reflect on what has been achieved, but it's also an occasion to reflect on what is yet to be done. Latin America and the Caribbean is an incredibly exciting part of the world. It is the world's fourth largest regional economy. Young, culturally diverse, rich in natural resources, yet for 2 decades the region has not grown fast enough to close the gap with advanced economies. Labor productivity has contributed just 1/4 of average GDP growth across Latin America and the Caribbean, compared to 80% in other emerging economies. Now, that gap is a central challenge, but it is also the region's greatest opportunity. 10 years ago, the OECD Latin America and the Caribbean Regional Program was created to bring OECD evidence, standards, policy best practice and expertise to help unlock that potential. And today, we do celebrate what that partnership has achieved. Adherences to OECD legal instruments across the region have tripled, reaching 302 in total, the highest of any region with a dedicated OECD program. And that represents real alignment with the standards of good governance, open markets and transparent taxation that underpin sustainable growth. Our partnerships have deepened significantly. Argentina, Brazil and Peru are now accession candidate countries. New programs with Paraguay, Panama and the Dominican Republic are underway. Central America and the Caribbean are an increasingly important part of our work. The LAC region's engagement with the OECD is no longer peripheral, it's central to who we are. So today we launched the implementation plan for the OECD's strategic framework for Latin America and the Caribbean. It is ambitious, it deploys a broader range of tools, deepens engagement with Central America and the Caribbean, and it expands our work in Spanish and Portuguese, because impact requires accessibility. The stakes are real: slowing growth, persistent inequality, digital transformation, climate pressures, and shifting geopolitics. The OECD's role is to help ensure the region has access to the data, the analysis, and the policy frameworks to turn these challenges into opportunity. 10 years in, this partnership is stronger than ever. The next 10 years will matter even more. Thank you very much, and congratulations, and looking forward to the next 10 years of positive collaboration.
We now welcome remarks from the co-chair Costa Rica, Minister of Foreign Trade, Ms. Trejos Gallo.
Secretary General, Ministers, Excellencies. 10 years ago, the OECD Latin America and the Caribbean Regional Program was co-created on a premise that a sustained, structured partnership between the organization and the LAC region would make both stronger. Today, we can affirm that premise has held. This program has built something far more valuable than cooperation. It has built trust. Trust between institutions, trust between countries, and trust in the idea that dialogue, evidence, and better policymaking can help us navigate even our most complex challenges. That trust is not incidental, It is the foundation upon which this partnership stands. As the President of Costa Rica, Laura Fernandez, highlighted yesterday at the Economic Forum on Latin America and the Caribbean, our region is home to over 40% of the world's biodiversity, 1/3 of its freshwater resources, and some of the largest reserves of critical minerals, essential for the green and digital transitions. More than 60% of the region's electricity already comes from renewable resources. But perhaps more importantly, the LAC region is home to a generation of talented, connected, and entrepreneurial young people ready to shape the future. These are not regional assets. They are global assets. Last year, Costa Rica's presidency of the Ministerial Council Meeting, OECD members adopted the strategic framework for Latin America and the Caribbean. And this week, its implementation plan moves forward. Together, they represent a shared decision, one taken by all members, that our engagement with the LAC region is strategic and mutually beneficial. This reaffirms our commitment to address our shared challenges. The OECD has always been strongest when it connects to ideas, to actions that transform shared knowledge into meaningful policy reform. Over the last decade, the Latin American and the Caribbean Regional Program has shown what is possible when countries come together around common values, mutual trust, and a commitment to better policies. The results speak for themselves: stronger institutions, deeper cooperation, and a partnership that has become an essential platform for addressing challenges that no country can solve alone. But the challenges and opportunities ahead demand even greater ambition. Today, I invite all OECD members and partners to deepen their engagement with Latin America and the Caribbean, not simply as an act of cooperation, but as an investment in our shared future. Let us work together to expand the reach of OECD standards, unlock innovation and investment, and build the strong and inclusive economies our citizens expect. Because when OECD members, partners, and the LAC region work side by side, we do more than shape better policies. We create greater opportunities, stronger institutions, and a more prosperous future for generations to come. Thank you.
We now welcome remarks from the co-chair, Uruguay, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ms. Valeria Csukasi.
Secretary General Cormann, ministers, dear colleagues, 10 years. This is how long Latin America and the Caribbean and the OECD have been building something genuinely meaningful together. And I think it is worth pausing to appreciate just how much has changed in this time. This program was born from a simple but powerful idea that our region and this organization had more in common than geography might suggest, and that working together could make both stronger. A decade later, that idea has held up, and this is not something simple in the world that we are living in. We have learned from each other, shaped policies together, and built trust along the way. Last year, at this Ministerial Council Meeting, we approached the OECD Strategic Framework for Latin America and the Caribbean, a framework that reflects a two-way commitment, not the OECD reaching towards our region, but also both sides moving towards each other. It gives structure to our collaboration while leaving room for what matters just as much, the ability to adapt. Because the world is changing and our countries are navigating a more complex global environment, new pressures and new opportunities are emerging across our economies and societies, and they call for fresh thinking. The new cycle of this program is precisely an opportunity to do that, to identify together where our collaboration can have the greatest impact given the realities of today, and to act on it with the sense of purpose that this partnership deserves. That is the spirit we are bringing to Montevideo, Uruguay, where on the 29th and 30th of September this year, we will host the Ministerial Summit of the program, a moment to take stock of a decade, to open the next one with clear ambition, and to demonstrate in practice what a genuine OECD LAC partnerships looks like. We hope to see you all there. Thank you very much.
We now invite remarks from Spain's Secretary of State for Ibero-America, the Caribbean, and for Spanish in the world, Ms. Susana Sumelzo.
Buenos días.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Secretary General.
Estimados presidentes.
Distinguished presidents and chairs and vice chairs of the Ministerial Council Meeting of the OECD. I'm going to speak Spanish, a language that more than 600 million people in the world share. And if we include Portuguese, and if we include Brazil, another Latin American country, we have 850 million people who speak Spanish or Portuguese. Spain is seeking to promote the use of Spanish and Portuguese in the OECD, and a group of Spanish Latin American countries have established the Friends of Spanish group at the OECD. Distinguished colleagues, from Spain, we would like to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the LAC regional program. Over the past 10 years, this program has been a wonderful platform. It has brought together the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean and the OECD, strengthening public policies, promoting shared standards, and building cooperation based on mutual learning and our common benefit. Today, this relationship is becoming even more strategic. Latin America and the Caribbean are key partners in order to build a more stable, inclusive, and sustainable world order. We live in a world that's undergoing a lot of turbulence, and we need to be able to count on the contribution and values of all the countries of the region. Spain is committed with this strategic partnership, and this is why we would like to thank the co-chairs of Uruguay and Costa Rica, because on the 1st of July, we will be celebrating in Madrid the OECD LAC Ministerial Dialogue. We hope that this will help strengthen convergence between the OECD and the region, and we will consolidate cooperation that will rise up to the major challenges of the 21st century. I would like to conclude by conveying the message of Minister Alvarez, who was not able to attend the session today. Spain is working closely with all the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean in favor of multilateralism and for an OECD that is more open and more connected to the LAC region. Thank you very much.
Now we invite to the stage the full membership of the Latin America and Caribbean Regional Program Bureau and delegations from Latin America and the Caribbean for a photo. We ask that delegates in the audience remain seated during the photo. Thank you very much. Thank you and congratulations. Please remain seated as the co-chairs and the Bureau leave the stage. The opening of the 2026 OECD Ministerial Council Meeting continues with our panel discussion next.